All right, welcome to another episode of the More Disciples podcast. I am Roger Scholl here with my co-hosts Lee Wood, Doug Lucas, and John Hirima. We are in a series where we're going over 7 movement principles that Lee has learned in 7 years of pursuing movement. So Lee, why don't you tell us the movement principle that we are going to be talking about today?
I hadn't thought about that, Roger. It's like one per year. He's learned one principle per year. Go for it, Lee.
Yeah, exactly. So the second principle that we've learned, probably the one that I failed worst at in the first 2 years, so I think it took me more than 2 years to learn the second principle, was to pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost.
That's good. That is something that I have had to learn too. Pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost. And I'm really excited to introduce our guests who, this is my first time meeting them. I'm really happy to meet these brothers who are working in Southeast Asia. And they, from what I hear, they have a great story to illustrate this principle. So we have Trevor and Budi joining us from Southeast Asia. So yeah, I just wonder if Trevor, maybe you could even start us off, tell us how you got started in movements, how maybe you and Budi met. Maybe you guys can talk about that. And then, how did you find those few to pour into? Maybe you could start us off in that way.
So before he does that, I want to say this. So I've had the opportunity to meet and get to know these guys over the last couple of years, and they were the model for part of these things. Some things that they'll share on this call is I just took those things from these brothers, okay, and was able to bring them back to our churches and networks and things in the States. So that fruit from there of being that thing, their obedience to this second one has been tremendously impactful, and fruit has been born because of their faithfulness and willingness to spend and be spent for Jesus. And I have mad respect and love for them. So I'm so excited that they're on the podcast.
I met them in Thailand, Lee, but when I heard them speak, I think the person introducing Trevor and Budi said that they had a movement now with somewhere between 20,000 and 50,000 disciples. But Lee, you traveled there, didn't you? Didn't you go to Southeast Asia where they work?
No, actually, where I met them was in a 24-14 setting, agreeing with one another, using movement principles as co-laborers with sacrificial urgency to reach everyone everywhere. And I was really stuck on how to develop and multiply leadership. And Trevor and Budi could talk about coaching circles, but really that's been so impactful for all of our work, not only in the United States, but globally because of their influence.
All right. Well, that was a good introduction. It makes me even more excited. So Trevor, why don't you maybe you can introduce yourself and Budi and talk about how you guys got started in movement world and how you have learned to walk out this principle of really finding the few and pouring into them. I'd love to hear that from you guys.
I want to skip back on this topic to my first year as a believer when I was 18. And during my sleep one time, the Lord gave me a dream. And he gave me a life mission of picking 25 to invest in deeply. And I really felt at the time that what God was saying is, I don't intend for you to become famous, but I want you to think of an honorable use of a life of pouring into a few, and in particular, a few who will become multipliers in extreme ways in many places in the world. And some years forward from that, in around 2002, I had fevers for 10 months and I could only sleep about 2 hours a night. And I actually wondered if I was going to die. And during that time in my delirium, the Lord gave me another dream and he said, count. And I felt like he wanted me to count whether I'd gotten to 25. And I'd gotten to 27, and Budi was one of the 27 at that time. And I wondered, I said to the Lord, well, does that mean my job is over? Is this the end of my life now because I've accomplished? And he said, no, I want you to count another 25 and just keep going and keep focusing on a few and just watch what these few will do. So this topic has a lot of meaning for me. It's very close to my heart.
So I think about where John said, I have no greater joy than to hear my children walking according to truth. And I heard somebody ask me one time in our home the same thing, sharing and trying to live out that same thing. Like, what's your greatest joy? That's the joy is the few, and to actually see them bearing much fruit. And the guy that trained me is like, he would ask me all the time if I'm having fun. Yeah, I'm having fun seeing and hearing and watching Jesus give the increase from them being obedient to that. So thank you again, brother.
For me, it's kind of like a small child that's about one and they see the packages under the Christmas tree and they get excited about the packages. And just the outside itself is what's exciting. But then when they're around two, they start realizing there's something inside and they get excited about tearing off the wrapping and finding out what's inside. And for me, that's how I think of these people is I see a certain package. I see a certain way they present themselves publicly. But, I feel my job is to try to help them open the package and find the potential and get out, the gifts that God has given them.
How do you find them, Trevor? How do you discover which ones are like the 25 or the ones that you're wanting to invest in?
Well, I think for me, the finding of Budi was because he was one of the younger members of a team of people that had been recruited onto a team by someone else. But we were at a crisis. And normally in our country, they would pick a most senior person for the team leader to help them through a crisis. They were wanting to actually oust the team leader and find a second one. And everyone wanted to pick Budi. And I remember being really shocked by that because I thought my assumption was they wouldn't pick that young of a person. But I think a big lesson I learned from that is you have to depend on the way other people see them, not just the way you see them.
Is there anything else besides I like that principle, just the way that people view them, like they're influential to the people you're working amongst. But is there anything else that you've learned about how to find those few in your years of doing this?
Well, you throw the net wider, you have a broader set of public ministries, but the purpose for that is filtering. And so you're looking through all the people and how they're responding, and you're sorting through, and then you're finding certain kinds of people. And after a time, you're beginning to realize there's certain criteria you're looking for. So we get into these discussions with Budi and with his friends. So what are we looking for? And we have a lot of long discussions on this, and this helps us sharpen that criteria and improve the filtering. For me, I'm looking for leaders. I asked my wife this morning. She said, well, I've been living with you for 40 years, and you look for leaders, you look for multipliers, you look for reproducers, and you look for faithful and available, teachable people. And I thought, yeah, I guess that's right. So that's gives you
it's pretty interesting
summary.
that your wife knows what you're looking for and can articulate it, but not yourself exactly.
Well, he found her.
I can relate to that.
He found her.
It's interesting to me is not from afar, but knowing you and Budi a little bit is, to me, there's an awareness of anointing. Like they took note of people that they spent time with Jesus, right? That transcends like whatever that is. There's an awareness of that, and I don't know how you package that exactly inside of filtering for the few, but I know that's true, and I'm looking forward to actually Budi being able to share on the podcast, because that's going to be the model for others, the same way that you've poured into him, and that will be evident, and it'll be able to be that model. And that's why I'm excited about being able to do this and leverage technology for that to spread. So again, thank you for your faithfulness, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to piggyback on both what you guys have said, Trevor, how long did it take you to embrace that filter? I mean, it's one thing to
Good
recognize the
question.
filter, but how long did it take you to embrace it and realize that really pouring into the few was better than trying to do a massive sowing?
You know, I had the privilege of being chosen by someone when I was maybe 2 years old in the Lord, and he had this principle of choosing a few, and he really pushed on Second Timothy 2:2, that we find the faithful few and really pour into those as they pour into others. You know, in my first period of being mentored, he told me to start praying for someone that I could disciple. And I said, you know, I didn't know how to disciple. That's why I'm trying to get help. Say, yeah, but you won't be learning unless you're doing it at the same time.
Yeah.
And so
That's so good right there.
I started praying, and he told me, "Don't worry, God's not going to answer your prayer unless He thinks you're ready." And so I started praying, and God gave me somebody, and I started pouring into the few, and they started pouring into the few, and they started pouring into the few. And looking back, you know, much later, I heard about movements and multi-generational. But back in those days, 2 years old in the Lord, we were already into the third generation of groups, and you know, I'd never heard anything about CPM or DMM, but that was the fruit of the focus on the few.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like the Holy Spirit likes to work in similar ways, even if we don't even realize it. So I think that's really good. You know, I think one thing that I really appreciate about this call is just that prayer that Jesus makes in John 17, that he doesn't just pray for his
Amen.
disciples, but everyone who will believe in him through the work of his disciples. And so I love that we can see just the model of someone that you've poured into, that I'm sure you've passed on this principle to Budi as well. So I'd love to hear from you, Budi. Like, how has Trevor passed on this principle to you, and how have you also filter define these leaders, and how have you tried to pour into them in this work of multiplication?
Yeah, I will share about with one case with one leader in one area. It's a border of Central Java and West Java. When I have a lot of traveling to find the first time to find a person of peace. When I in the one area and I find one man in the area. I know a lot of people in the area, but when I uh, observe observation to other people, I meet and I found just one man. I have some principle about how to find the leader. Okay. Especially when with the topic with just a few leader. It's about the process, but I will share about the principle. The first, I use a key word. The first is take time. The
Mm.
second is take heart, and the third is take circle. When I use with the three principle, I found the three principle in the man. And another things, I have a four skill to observe when I choose a few leader, just limited leaders. Uh, yeah, I want share about the principle with four skill. The first is about I want to find about think tank. It's a think tank because I think I need men or several people know the DNA of movement, and I need a think tank in the movement. And the second, I need a man or another people with eagle eyes,
Mm.
with people big vision. They have a big vision, not only limited just the region or area, but large of vision, large of area. It's about democration, because when I meet some field worker, they have just limited vision, just how to reach the area or region. In the movement, I want to found not only just limited region, but a large vision. It's, yeah, like eagle eyes, like this. And the third, I want to found some people with strong feet and arm. He or she responsive and active. Responsive for other thing and active for when they can do it everything like this. And the four, I've I want to found some people with wise man. Wise man is about communication. Is a good communicator or negotiator, because in Indonesian context, the skill is a very important. How to communicate with another culture, how to spread the gospel, or how to spread the DNA of movement to another culture or island like this. I make a observation with some people, and I found, yeah, one or several people with four skill and three things with takes time. Yeah, it's about a process. I take time with them. I take heart about yeah, it is about the burden, about the vision like this, and take circles about social networking, because when we found some people with the big circle, big influence, big social network, is a good point how to spread the gospel, how to make, yeah, the movement not only in the one area, but another area. Yeah, it's my principle about how to found the few leaders. But I want to share about one things. Uh, it's a story change my mindset, because when I start the ministry, I'm very joy when I go to
Very,
another,
very, very joyful. Yeah.
yeah, joyful when I go to another places, and I found some leaders in the places, and I give a report to Trevor. Trevor said to me, "Oh, it's good, but I think Jesus just have 12 disciples, and I think no one have power and yeah, everything than Jesus." The first time is joyful because I found a lot of leaders. Every places I have a leaders, but when I meet with a Trevor, it's a big challenge. I am very sad after the meeting. Yeah, because uh,
I have a question. So I have a question. So this reminds me, Booty, of the person that was Trevor to me. So I was very excited and very joyful, right? to do these things. And I had very many people, right? And then that's where I learned it from, was from the person that was pouring into me. He would say, have you ever considered pouring deeply into the few? And I was like, no. No, seems to be working.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, when you were beginning that with Trevor, how long did it take you to sort of to begin to adopt that into pouring into the few? How long was that sort of to learn that, brother?
Okay. Yeah. After the meeting with Trevor, yeah, I take more time to prayer and fasting because it's a big challenge for me. Yeah, I think it's very easy to found the leader every places, but to choose deeply just a
Mm.
uh, few leaders, and we call it a core team or ring one. It's a very yes, very hard for me.
I
And
love that. So capture that core team, ring one. Those are things to capture right there. This is so good, brother. Thank you.
yeah, and I need 1 quarter. It's about 3 months. Yeah, I look at the chart, like egg chart, and I learn about the egg chart. I think,
Let me
yeah,
mention this. Let me mention this, Budi. The reason he's using the word egg chart is that we draw circles on a piece of paper, and for them they look like eggs. And the idea is that an egg has ability to birth the next group and the next group. And so these pictures of egg charts is what we call them, are how we track our groups.
Generational
Yeah.
diagrams.
after I look at every paper egg chart, and I my hand every egg chart, and after that I observe of about the every egg chart, and I found some the egg charts with some people is they have good influence and large influence. They got the four criteria, and I think not only about the skill, but they have a lot of the fruit, not only in the area, but they have a 3 or 4 area and 1 or 2 island or UPG like this. Oh, I think I want to focus in with several people like this, and I want to take time with the several people like this, and I focusing to training and mentoring with several people, and they know about the DNA, the DNA of movement. I share about the DNA of movement to several people, and yeah, it's a Alhamdulillah, praise the Lord, because the several people, for now it's 9 people, they have all the quality, all the criteria like this.
One of those things that I hear and things that stand out is that he's picks those ones and he's looking at the egg chart, and he's looking on those egg charts for those one that he's following those principles and those criterions on, and the ones that are going to where it's not, to another place of where it's not. And he sees that in them, that they have a bias toward action. They're good communicators, but they're not going to where it already is. They're going to where it's not. That's really good.
Yeah, that's good. Trevor, you found somebody really smart here. It's obvious that you've discovered. Was Budi like this when you met him, or did you just help him become this smart, Trevor?
No, I would say he was like this before I knew him. And I feel like you have to discover potential and validate it, affirm it, and affirm it in front of others where it helps their connections to even increase the benefits of that. I don't know that I claim that. We do a lot, Budi and I do a lot with creativity is a special area of potential for Budi. And how do we create an environment where more creativity develops and with it more advances?
Nice. Would you help us review the 3 rings, Trevor? What were those 3 rings he mentioned?
Well, what we have in the inner ring is we say don't do more than Jesus did, so we try to choose 12. And then there can be a next ring of less influence, for less time investment. For me, my ring 1 is my 30-day a year people. My ring 2 is 20 to 25, and my ring 3 is 15 days a year. But we can still have other rings, but we keep identifying who's in our top ring that we're going to give the highest priority to.
Would you review the 4 skills he mentioned? Big vision, strong feet, arms, responsive and active, wise man? No, I don't think I got those down correctly.
I think you've caught the 4.
Yeah, 4.
Wisdom.
Ego eye understands the DNA. I might have them wrong. Big vision toward multiplication. Okay, strong and active. For me, that's biased toward action. They're doers. And then the last one is wise man, communicator, and innovative.
I love that.
So it's really interesting. He's intentional. And so if you think of 2 Timothy 2, that's passed down into him. Hey, what you've seen in me, what you've seen and heard, Paul to Timothy, faithful men. He's very intentional.
I love it, Pat Budi. I could just sit and listen to you go on and on, Pat Budi.
What I want you to notice about his story is that he got to a lot of fruit in a lot of areas. But he begins to be hit hard by the problem of overwhelm, by the amount of fruit. I see this over and over in these types of people that the Lord leads me to. At the same time period, I was talking to 2 other guys, and they were facing the same kind of problems, that they were just being overwhelmed with their fruit. And I started this thing of, who are you to think you're doing more than Jesus did with 12? It was just a way of using humor to kind of zing it in there and bring it back to the principle of 12. And I began to realize these guys all thought they had 40 people in their inner ring. And I said, oh man, this is going to kill you. And so for my part, it's to help protect them from getting beat up by their own fruitfulness. That's maybe another side of it we don't think about. But how do we reduce it down so that we can have a life that's livable and focus on the 12, and so can they, and so can they, and so it still keeps multiplying.
Budi is smarter than I was. That's why I asked the question. So Budi, after he listened to Trevor and fasting and prayer, and his egg chart became different. My egg chart, it took me much longer and much pain because my egg chart was this way. My egg chart was not that way. It's the same thing. And I think to highlight inside of this is very important. If you find people that are catalysts, that are leaders, or people that God will use, I think this is something that the faster that those people that are maybe called, chosen, gifted that way, the sooner that they get, like Budi did, inside of 3 months. It's a challenge that you face, but the sooner that you can get to obedience of circle 1, then I think from a DNA perspective, then that's where we will see more fruitfulness and multiplication the way that Trevor and Budi have.
Yeah, that's actually a question I have even in regards to that, like focusing on the few. It almost seems counterintuitive. But I'm wondering, you got those different circles, and you even said like you give time and your heart to that inner circle, if I heard correctly. But I was wondering, like, how do you treat those faithful few like differently than maybe other people? Like, what do you focus on doing with them when you're with them?
Well, let me give you my answer, and then Budi will probably have a good answer as well. For me, Budi is the one that I can go with and speak internationally because he's the only one that speaks English. So we have special times on the road, and sometimes it can be 5 days in the row in the same hotel room, and we're evaluating everything that's happening, including the challenges of whatever group we're with. And there's just a lot of good intensive time. So for me, and also because Budi lives somewhat further from me, I really enjoy those times with him and their intensive trips of doing ministry together. So that's a uniqueness in his case with because of his ability. And the second thing is I confer with him, and he's a part of the inner ring. And so I confer with him about decisions. I did that yesterday about a decision I wanted to make. It's a part of giving honor, but I don't just do it so that they think I'm giving honor. I really actually feel that I respect him, and so I want to know his input. So we were making consensus building, decision making on a step we need to make in our ministry to strategically, and who were the right people to choose for that process. So that's another aspect, is the consensus, making decisions together. That would be a second element. A third thing for me is there are people that I need to open my heart up with. I was raised in a cultural segment where you try to hide your feelings, but I've had to try to learn how to open my heart and be more vulnerable about some of my own needs, because not only do they feel that you're trusting them, and therefore your relationship as it is at a deeper level, but it also nudges them in the direction of doing the same, because of the principle of pattern imitation, that they start doing the same with the next generation. This is actually not an easy thing for me, as I said, culturally, but something I feel is important, because people live with a lot of rawness, whoever they are. And if they feel they have to hide it all and wrap it up, it really can take a hold in their lives and accomplish negative things unless it's shared in a circle of trusted people.
So my question inside of there would be, so the simplicity of relational intimacy of loving one another. When did you start that with Booty? How long have you guys been connected um, relationally to Jesus and to one another?
Well, Budi, probably began to know each other around 2000, but when we really became strongly connected, would you say 2005, or do you remember what year?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
think
it's about,
2000.
I would say 15 years now.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord, bro.
You know what I like about you, Trevor, is that you have this way of analyzing yourself and others in light of God, and then being able to share that with the people around you. And I would say that's really helpful for that inner ring, because what you're probably constantly doing is you're probably analyzing the situation and making sure that Booty and the others in that inner ring are grasping what's going on in this scenario. And that way they're able to function with you in your thinking, and like you said, able to advise you. Part of that is because you're making sure they catch all the little ramifications, I think.
That's actually quite a lot of insight. Thank you for noticing. And I think that's part of my role too, is how do you pay attention to the details of others' lives so that they feel understood.
That's good.
Good. Sounds like you guys have just a deep brotherhood together. You're not just coworkers in this. But yeah, I would love to hear, Booty, from you. If you could maybe share, I'd love to hear a story about how you have poured into a leader in your life, even like a recent story, if you have one, of how you poured into someone in your ministry.
Yeah. I think I have another principle. Yeah. Uh, I love with numbers because when I use with numbers, it's easy to memorize, and yeah, easy to duplicate with another leaders like this. Yeah, I have another principle about some people, especially with the nine leaders in core one. My core one is my ring one like this. Yeah, my principle is the key word is still. The first is still communicating with. It's not only about the communication. It's about building trust each
Mm,
other like this. And the second, still praying for, because when we do the ministry in the some area, they have many burdens, struggles like this, for many tears like this, and we still are praying together.
amen.
And third, we still learning from the scripture, and we sometimes we take time like a verse or pages from the scripture, and we learn together. For example, in the pandemic period, it's open the heart to God. And, yeah, we are still learning together.
So Budi is reflecting that we've had over 400 COVID deaths in our network of
Mm,
small groups. So we've been dealing with a lot of grief among our leaders, including many of our leaders have died. And so he's really wrestling with and helping them. That's where he's talking about still learning,
mm,
in this case, about something that's very currently needed, about how to really express our full feelings and our full emotions to God through the Psalms.
mm,
And with the still learning, I use the opportunity not only learning, but I use the opportunity to write a book, and the book for is about mentoring, and like a DPS series. Yeah, I read some books, DPS series like this, and I after the print, I share to another leaders, another believers. From we have a discussion together with some leaders, a few leaders. And the fourth, still trying and evaluating. It's my principle is try and error, try
mm.
and error. Yeah, because in the movement, in the ministry, we do a lot of try and error about everything, about the approach, about the methods, about the just the leaders, and everything like this. And not only try and error, but I we have evaluation period. After we try and error, we have evaluating together. For me, it's 6 months. After 6 months, it's effective. But when we have something is not effective, and we can cut or we modification like this. Yeah.
This is so encouraging to me because you guys know what the next principle is that we're addressing. So it's
Keep
like,
doing what you're doing and you'll
yeah,
get better at
keep
it,
doing
right?
what you're doing, you'll get better at it. But so all of these, if you listen to Budi's story or to Trevor's or even where he started at, is if we take care of the depth of our ministry, he takes care of the breadth. God spoke to Trevor. Hey, 25. And he like that relational intimacy with the Lord. And then dripping that down to one another, pouring deeply into the few who obey no matter what the cost. Then what I just got from Budi from this principle is keep doing what you're doing, trial and error, you'll get better at it. But he actually has a way of measuring of what to say no to and what to say yes to that will further the DNA. That's powerful. That's powerful about trial and error because he's intentional about that. Man, I'm about ready to get excited.
Yeah, I like that one because I think I've always done it trial and error and error and error and error and don't reevaluate after 6 months.
Yeah, that's
and so
so
I like that
good.
you even cap it.
He has a
'Cause I think-
place at about fruit and the measure. So he has like a compelling dashboard of how he's doing that with those ones that he's paying into, that like he's intentional about what's going to further. That's really good.
You know, he hasn't mentioned an aspect of why this is so important in our culture. People are very hesitant to try new things because they really get criticized when it doesn't work out really well. So we're trying to create an environment where they feel really free to do the trials. That's a big part of it. That's already in the US culture, but in the cultures where we live, that is pounded down and out of the way. And we have to really build a sense that you can try something new.
So, but he's going back to the
He's looking for creative people.
Those ones that have less DNA, ones that might be more willing to be the doers initially. Like he's being intentional what he's filtering for because he knows where he's going. If I'm being accurate, like
so the 4 stills were still communicating, still praying, still learning, and still trying and evaluating.
That's right.
Okay. Now, Roger actually asked you, Budi, if you could tell a story about a person. Do you have some person maybe that you visited, maybe a key leader? Say you're on a trip right now. Have you visited a key leader on this trip you could tell Roger about?
For example, 1 month later, 1 month ago, and 2 months ago, I have a trip to visit some leaders. Yeah, I used the opportunity with the pandemic periods. I take time with some leaders, with a few leaders, at least. And when we communication or discussion in the car together, it's a good point. It's a good opportunity with another leaders. We can know about another burden. We can cross learning together in the car. For me, I can do a short training or mentoring with key leaders like this because I bring another leader together in on the car, and when we have a meeting with another key leaders, it's a good point. It's a good opportunity. We can cross learning together. We can pray together, and yeah, everything together. The opportunity to do training or mentoring.
So Budi is talking about him cross-weaving together regional leaders from different regions that he invites in the same car trip to go together to empower a distant set of leaders, and they're utilizing the car trip time for the cross-weaving.
So I love the way that he's intentional with his time, and it's as he's going and doing and calling them up, raising them up together. Like all these things, these same base patterns and principles. But notice that what we're talking about is pouring deeply into the few and all those ways that he filtered for it and the practical way that he's just living that out in his life with them. So another principle that we will be covering is obey and train others. Obey and train others. We can't pass on what we do not possess, but what they actually possess, they can multiply that. But they actually build on one another. And Budi, what's so wonderful about this is this same basic DNA is Trevor was talking about. It's the same in the US. It's the same in Southeast Asia. It's the same in Central Asia. It's the same everywhere. It's Jesus. And those things is we cannot manufacture this. It's God. So go back to intimacy with Trevor, where he said, God spoke to me, and you watched him get emotional. He still remembers that. He still remembers that God spoke. In the same way that Budi remembers is that God spoke, and that was dripped down into him from Trevor pouring into Budi, and Budi doing the same thing with those.
Trevor, as you
Praise the
think
Lord.
about some of the things that Budi has shared, Trevor, what's coming to your mind now? What's entering into your mind as you have heard him share?
Well, I remember the time when he had 40 key people, and so did the other two most fruitful guys. And I could not figure out how to turn this to selection on a few. So I started using a lot of teasing. So I started saying, does your children still remember your name? Don't tell me I'm going to have to visit you in the mental hospital. I've just used any kind of jokes I could to try to help them realize if they didn't get their life in control, they weren't going to have the kind of impact that they wanted to have. But I remember do you remember it that way? I felt like I was relentless with teasing for like 6 months. I just kept teasing and teasing because the principle had been conveyed, but how do you get it past some of the style of life that we have, so
He doesn't
really
remember that, Trevor,
get some
because in
based.
Budi's mind, it was only 3 months. You're now saying 6 months. In Budi's mind, it was only 3 months. Okay. So I'm going to trust my brother because it took me much longer than him. So I'll tell this story on myself, and you can ask, the guy that was Trevor to me, my Apostle Paul. I started 63 of those. I had 63 of those, not 40. Very wide, not deep. And it took me way longer than 3 months or 6 months to grasp the things that you're articulating now. And I'm very, very, very grateful. Um,
It's a special
I miss
problem of
being
super
able
spreaders.
I miss being able to, when we were together, and I'm not saying where it was at or anything, but where Budi and your team and you trained us how to use those coaching circles, okay, of how to face challenges. Like, what's the challenge? What are the resources, human and spiritual, that you have, and what will happen if you don't address the challenge, and action steps toward that. That was the influence of you guys into other people at another level, that I was able to take that and to do that. That's multiplied, brother. I want you to know that there's been fruit from that that's far beyond anything that you can grasp, and we should encourage one another. And I want to tell you, thank you, that has, again, that's multiplied far and wide because of your obedience, Trevor, because of your obedience, Budi, because of those others in your circles. That has multiplied, and that is movement. And that's what people don't understand. That's movement. That's God.
It's great.
Well, hey, I think want to close out, sum up some of what at least I heard and learned about this principle of pour deeply into the few who obey no matter what. So just learn the importance of, not going beyond the 12, beyond Jesus, what Jesus did, and finding those particular disciples. But even the people you're looking for are people with big vision, those eagle eyes. They have strong arms and legs, so they're going to go do the work. What we took away from that they're wise people and good communicators. They have a wide network, and they are bearing fruit. I also heard how you spend time with them is just you give them a lot of time. You give them more time than maybe even some people in that second or third ring. I hear that you share your heart. You have an intimate relationship of just bearing one another's burdens and sharing your feelings, which, Trevor, you said was difficult to do. But I even heard, Budi, you saying that you have these things that you still do with multiple leaders. You still communicate, still pray, still learn, and still try and evaluate. So I appreciate that's all the stuff that I took away, and I'm sure there's more that I could take away, but I think those are great principles on how to find leaders and what to do with them.
So these 7 principles, like, you've actually heard them cover so many inside of here. So I'll say this one. This is relational before it's organizational. So they didn't manufacture this. You heard that from Trevor to Budi and what their relationship looks like with one another because of Jesus. It's always relational before it's organizational. It flows from that. So, man, I've been blessed, man. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for taking time.
Yeah, thanks so much.